Joining me on air on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line, getting set for his 24th year as head coach of Iowa Hawkeye football, is the man who always has my heart in my throat whenever my Wolverines take on his stout Iowa Hawkeye team. Head coach Kirk Ferentz here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Coach?
Rich, great. Good to be with you. And I got to tell you, my daughter went to Michigan.
Hey, okay. So
and,
what? Okay.
Yeah, Mary Sue Coleman was our president when I came here.
Okay.
And then she was up there when Kelly went to school. And I was told Mary Sue it was great that Kelly had a fallback school to go to. She couldn't get into Iowa, so at least she had a place where she could go get a college education. It was great.
Understood. So when, let's say you've got a play dialed up that you know is going to work against the Michigan offense or defense, why don't you next time just say, let's not run that. I don't want to do that to my daughter. I don't want to make her upset, right? Can you do that?
The ones we ran in December weren't so successful, so we're still looking for a few.
I like that. I appreciate you saying that. So, by the way, greetings from Big Ten country here in Los Angeles, Coach. Greetings from...
Yeah, whoever thought we'd be saying that.
I know, right? What do you think of the expansion into the West Coast Pacific time zone, UCLA and USC, Coach Ferentz?
Quite honestly, two takeaways for me were, first of all, I was amazed at just the secrecy. I don't know how big the circle was. There had to be more than two people involved. So the fact that they kept it so quiet, whoever was involved, I thought that was really impressive. And then my second thought, I'm really glad I'm not one of the Olympic sport coaches at either of those two schools because, they're going to have some tough road trips. It's hard to imagine that playing at Iowa or Nebraska would feel like a home game if you're a coach on the West Coast. But that's kind of what they're looking at right now. So,
do you like this expansion era, Coach? Are you saying this is progress, or are you saying I'm a little bit more old school? I kind of liked it the way things have been. Coach, what do you think?
As my age would indicate, I am a little bit old school, but I've really, you're part of this, and I spent a couple of years in the NFL, and each and every year was a new year and a different year, and certainly the last 20, 23, 24 years, even longer than that in college football, are really interesting. I'll go back. My first head coaching job was at the University of Maine, early 90s, and Kevin White, who left Maine, went to Tulane, Arizona State, Notre Dame, and just retired at Duke. I remember Kevin talking about the impact of TV sets and realigning of conferences and all. I had no idea what he was talking about, zero. Mm-hmm. And the things that he was privy to, I guess, back 30 years ago, they've kind of come to fruition. And starting at Penn State, joining the Big Ten, and then you go from there. So times are very different. And then I think the last 5-10 years have taught us is, when it comes to college, geography and tradition really are secondary to TV opportunities. And I think when the Big Ten Network started, to me, that was really the beginning of a major shift in terms of college football.
Yeah, and normally the goal is to play UCLA in the Rose Bowl as the Rose Bowl. Now it's a Big Ten conference game. I can't kind of wrap my head around that just yet, but it's coming. And there is also another accelerant in this, as you had mentioned, television contracts, Coach Kirk Ferentz. But there's also the NIL deals that are changing the landscape of college football. What is your approach to the name, image, and likeness deals that are out there now, Coach?
First of all, I really didn't pay attention to it the first X amount of months, really kind of started zeroing in on February after we got done with recruiting. And a couple of things. I think there's probably a fair amount of exaggeration about some of the things that are going on in terms of, just how significant or how fine the print is in some of those contracts. So I think that's going to be interesting over time. One thing we haven't experienced yet is, guys getting big contracts in college and then maybe not producing at the level that the people paying those contracts expect. We've seen that happen in pro baseball or pro baseball is really the first sport with really true free agency, at least that I can remember when I was a kid. So that's going to be something. And the other thing, I think it really kind of jumped out at me in terms of, you think about all the guys that play college football, how many are really benefiting all that much? I think, anything that the guys can get's great. But as far as these ones that you hear about, it's a really small percentage of the guys that truly play the game. So only time will tell how it's really going to impact us, but it's certainly given us one thing more to navigate. On a humorous note, our guys are now getting exposed to the world of taxes, something that they really, I don't think, understood. And we want to make sure they do understand so they don't get surprised there. So that's kind of interesting. But the other part, which is true for each and every one of us, and I tell our guys all the time, all of us only have so much time, so much energy. So you just got to be really careful about where you spend it and where you dedicate it towards.
Have you, Kirk Ferentz, identified a player that you would like on Iowa Hawkeye football, and in your program that's turned to you and said, I would do that if you matched a certain number I'm getting on an NIL deal as an inducement? Has that happened to you?
No, it's really interesting. I think this past Sunday was the first time I've had a recruit bring it up. Now, I'm not saying that, they haven't maybe talked to our assistants. I imagine that's a possibility. But, we haven't really experienced that. And our players in our program, Tyler Linderbaum was probably our best known guy last year, almost inadvertently raised $36,000, and he gave it to the Children's Hospital just to give an indication. We're lucky the guys we get to work with, and I would have had no problem with him putting that in his pocket. But, no, it really hasn't been a big factor yet. I'm sure it's going to become more of one. And, if we could write the script, our approach, I think, would be to I'd prefer to see players that are actually in college who have done something, see them get rewards in proportion to what they've accomplished. And it'd be nice if there's an academic component to it. That's probably, it's probably not the real world. But, I think all of us function better when production's rewarded as opposed to potential or projection.
So you're saying a recruit had the temerity of saying to you, Kirk Ferentz, in year 24 of Iowa football, I'd love to play for you if you matched another deal? Like they actually said that to your face? That happened?
He was talking about, just the world of NIL. And if you understood his background, you'd understand it. And I think you would. At least I felt like I did. And it was totally innocent. But no, he was not trying to cut a deal. And, I'm sure that day's coming, but haven't had that experience yet.
Kirk Ferentz here on the Rich Eisen Show. Quarterback competition for you over the next couple weeks for your opener? Is that what you got going on?
I think yes and no. I think that probably gets played a little bit more publicly, or it's a bigger deal publicly. The way what I said in Indianapolis a week plus ago was that I feel really fortunate that we've had two guys our team we won games with, and Spencer got injured last year, had to come out, and Alex Padilla stepped in and did a great job, and it led us to a couple of victories. And there are teams in the country, teams in our conference that couldn't say that last year. They lost their guy, and that's part of football. Players get hurt, and they couldn't overcome that. So I'm really proud of our team for overcoming that. And then obviously Alex did a really good job, and I think both Alex Padilla and Spencer Petras are better players than they were a year ago. That's our expectation for all of our players, especially our good guys. And so I think we've got a healthy situation, and we're going to let everybody compete in camp, every position, and we'll see where it all goes. So
I just have a question, and this is definitely for me, Coach Ferentz,
sure.
With Michigan coming on October 1st. Is the visitors' locker room still painted a lighter shade of pink in Iowa?
It still is, yeah. And the tradition of Coach Fry, we are definitely honoring that one and continuing that.
Okay. And did you put TVs and a very nice, comfortable couch in there for Michigan and the other visitors? Is it nice and homey, Coach?
Ironically, it's probably the nicest locker room in the Big Ten. I can talk from experience. I think I've been in every home locker room outside of our two newcomers. But it's a lot of talk about the pink, but it's really a very spacious, very nice locker room. Okay. And I don't think we've gotten many complaints about that part of it. Okay, the accommodations I'm checking all these boxes. All right. So before I let you go, you were in Patriots camp, right? Just last week. Your son plays for Belichick. What is that like, having your son play for a guy that you've known forever and a day, Coach? It's it certainly wasn't anything I ever thought would happen or hoped. Obviously, hope good things happen all the time, but it's just great. And his, I hate to talk about my kids, but his career is actually pretty amazing. He played here in 12. That was his last year. And couldn't get any traction in the NFL. Never really put shoulder pads on once for a full calendar year. Bill O'Brien gave him a chance to try to make the team in Houston. Bill's first year down there, and So James made the practice squad and then ended up gaining traction in Denver. Unfortunately, Gary Kubiak couldn't continue coaching. The new coach came in, took one look at James. James isn't the biggest guy in the world, and that was the end of his career in Denver. But anyway, he's fortunately been able to gain a little traction in New England. So, yeah, it was a thrill just to be at practice period, and then also to see James on the field is pretty cool.
Can you share just a little bit, whatever you're willing, about what talking ball with Bill Belichick is like, between Kirk Ferentz and Bill Belichick? A little fly on the wall for me?
I don't wonder an awful lot, but I always do wonder. I wonder every now and then what my life would have been if Coach Belichick hadn't called me back in 1993. And I think the truth of the matter is they had like 8 or 9 line coaches apply for the job. It just didn't work out. So they truly got to the bottom of the barrel. I ended up in Cleveland. But, so I'm just so appreciative of those 3 years to have a chance to work with Coach Belichick. And my oldest boys worked with him for 5 years, for him for 5 years. And now to have another son be up there, I just feel very, very appreciative. And, he's obviously an outstanding coach, but he's just a tremendous person on top of it. And I'm really appreciative of that part of it.
Do you talk ball with him and schemes and things like that, or do you do that?
Yeah, a little bit of schemes, but probably more just, people and, trends in the game, those types of things. Just maybe a little bigger picture that way. But, pretty much anything he says, I know that it's worth listening to. I can tell you that from my 3 years in Cleveland.
Coach Ferentz, appreciate the time. Let's chat down the line, October 1st. Think of me and your daughter, okay? Just a little bit. When you're taking on the Wolverines, please do that for me, okay?
No, she did. She finished up here and got a couple graduate degrees. So we got her back on track.
Back on track.
Just for the record.
Back on track. All right, I'll send everybody here in Big Ten country in Los Angeles your regards.
I appreciate it. Great to talk to you, Rich.
Always. Thank you. That's Coach Kirk Ferentz. You're 24. Wow. At Iowa on the Rich Eisen Show.